Hello, fellow Toolboxers. Thanks for joining us for this episode number 370, where we're going to do an interview with Alex Nowrasteh of the CATO Institute. He does a lot of statistical analysis and policy work with regards to immigration. So always good to get a different perspective in this crazy heyday that we have with what's going on. And it's just going to get wilder and wilder. Before starting, some housekeeping. We're coming up on our next E2 seminar very quickly. I definitely recommend coming to that if you're interested in the E2 cases. You're going to learn a lot practically of how to do it, how a package looks like. It'll give you a lot of confidence to be able to do it on your own. And it's at bare bottom price compared to how much you could charge, $300 just for our session. I wanted to make a full course that's bigger, but I realized just this 1 hour will do more than spending 10 hours of courses on this particular topic. So check that out. If you want more information, email me at info@immigrationlawyerstoolbox.com. I'll send you a link for signing up. Our community page is growing. I just did a post on LinkedIn telling immigration lawyers to join that we have a page where you could schedule, you could put the field office, you can go to interview for it now that interviews are happening again. And that way lawyers all across the country, when they don't have anybody in a local jurisdiction to go for an interview for their clients, they could go see the list and access it there and contact you with your name and email. Well, that was so good. We had 40 lawyers immediately sign up the community page, so it got busier. Now, every day I'm putting posts and updates on really important insider information I'm getting from various sources on immigration law for practitioners there, so they can get down the discussion page. You can ask questions and comment yourself, kind of like a Facebook page, but getting off Facebook and just controlling it ourselves here on this page is the way to go. On that page, we have CLEs. I did a L1 breakdown of recent AEO decisions. It's free. I did a business discussion with a business coach that we recorded. I'm going to have him on regularly, Justin Nope, and that's in our CLE section, as well as a bunch of other CLEs and white label content. If you follow us on social media, you see we put all these charts and statistical stuff to get attention. We're taking off our logos and giving you access like a Canva page where you could change the colors and make it your own and publish it on your site to get attention too. And we're just adding more and more of that kind of stuff. So I definitely recommend joining. If you want to do that, you have to be a lawyer. You have to be an immigration lawyer. You can be a person that's trying to be an immigration lawyer, but you have to be a private bar lawyer. Just email me at info@immigrationlawyerstoolbox.com, and that's the place to go. And you could email me and I'll add you to that. I just need your email address. I need your bar number so I know you're really an attorney. And also, the magazine issue number 8 is out right now. We're getting ready to publish number 9 next week. This is the Immigration Lawyers Toolbox magazine. Great articles, the previous one. We're interviewing a lot of our guests right now. You'll be seeing that coming up in the next couple of weeks on our interviews. But number 9 is another heavy hitter. Jeannie Doyle, one of our good friends, wrote a primer on P1s. I wanted a 2-page article. She wrote 7 pages on how to do a P1. So this is masterful, really exceptional work that she did there. We're really appreciative of it. I do want to thank the sponsor of this podcast episode and the sponsor of that last episode, issue number 9 of the magazine, Mitratech INS Zoom, which you're all really familiar with, one of the leading and first companies that get into space providing services to immigration lawyers for their forms. Are you tired of syncing your most valuable assets into a tedious data entry? Then it's high time to streamline your immigration process with Mitratech's INS Zoom, the leading immigration case management software trusted by top law firms and corporations worldwide. Mitratech's INS Zoom helps you manage cases, track deadlines, and automate workflows so you can focus on what matters most, your clients. But that's not all. And this is what's really new about what they're doing. Their INS Zoom software just launched GovNotice IDP, a revolutionary AI-powered tool that automatically extracts critical information from your government notices and receipts. No more manual data entry errors or headaches. Instead of traditional and highly time-consuming manual entry of USCIS data, GovNotice IDP automates the entire process, ensuring a safe, faster, more error-free experience. Legal teams can upload batches of receipts in bulk with automated classification and case linking, reducing processing time significantly, leading to high accuracy for hundreds of notices, option for automated email notification for internal and external stakeholders, and it supports USCIS receipt notices, including premium processing. So that's going to be a real important thing, as well as approval notices. With GovNotice IDP, you can process and manage your cases much faster and more efficiently than ever before. Ready to elevate your immigration practice to the next level? Learn more. Try this link. It shows that you guys are listening and hear about them here too. Use this one, hrc.mitratech.com/toolbox. That's hrc.mitratech.com/toolbox. All the information that's going to be presented here is not intended as individual legal guidance, but you all know that already. Let's get it started. Hey, Alex, thanks again for coming on the show.
Hey, thanks a bunch for having me.
So for the new viewers, you've been on the show once before. You're at the CATO Institute, the famous CATO Institute, and doing really, controversial is probably the best way to put it, but just like, stuff that under the current administration is going to get a lot of attention and already has, because you focus on a lot of the immigration statistics and policy in this field. But you're also in DC with all the layoffs and Doge and all that stuff's happening. What's the atmosphere over there? How do you see it being close? I'm on the opposite side of the country, so I only hear the reverberations of it. But how do you see it up close?
Well, the way I see it is there's just a lot of uncertainty and a lot of chaos and disorder around that, right? So a lot of which is to be expected. The federal government is huge. It spends about $7 trillion a year,
Well,
and Doge is coming in and trying to cut some things here and there. So the perception is it's chaotic, and it is chaotic. So it's just people don't know what to expect. And there's people who've lost their jobs, but there's a lot of court cases back and forth. Like a court just
yeah.
ruled, I think it was today, that a lot of the folks who are these probationary employees who were fired, a lot of them had to be rehired. So it's really we're in just like some very different territory.
And so, I mean, the $7 trillion number is huge. I don't even know where to start with that. Like, have there been any immigration effects on those cuts that you're aware of, or like the things that are happening?
Not really. So Doge is not taking a look at like security agencies and law enforcement agencies really as it goes into cutting. So they're focusing on like USAID,
Yeah,
foreign aid, Department of Education, Health and Human Services, departments like that. The security branches are basically off limits
yeah,
to Doge going in. And USCIS is a fees funded agency,
yeah,
so they're not really under that purview. So yeah, it's really like CBP and ICE, which are basically untouched.
yeah. And there's a bill I think that's like 300 billion for enforcement that's coming through. That could be a real game changer in their capabilities and detaining and all that kind of stuff. That's going to happen.
Yeah, it's 200 over the next 10 years is the current plan. Now that's the House
200 every year, or
resolution
200 spread out over the 10 years.
over 10 years.
Oh, I thought it was
So
like 200, 300 every year. I'm like, oh my God, that's a massive amount of revenue.
yeah, I mean that would be increasing the budget by about like 20-fold.
Yeah.
Um, if it were annual, it's
Yeah.
not annual, but it works out to basically a doubling of the budget. And this is at a time when the number of apprehensions across the border
Hmm.
is at very low numbers. So there'd really be not much for these individuals to do at this time except to focus on interior enforcement operations. That's where there'd be a big game change.
And the interior enforcement is troublesome because, I mean, there's talk of, okay, we go after the criminals first, people with deportation orders, but it seems like they have numbers that they have to get to. And the easy picking are the people who might have a case pending, a U visa or some sort of case where they could pick them up, but they defer to the agencies until they make a final decision. We're getting more and more word of people who have asylum cases pending for 7 years and they're waiting for a decision that just get picked up all of a sudden. And it's like, oh, wasn't expecting that. So it's that's a really scary part for people who are work permits and they have somewhat deferred action and but they're still going after them.
Yeah, no, it's a real problem or a real source of uncertainty
Yeah,
in this, and they're sort of running up against reality. ICE is running up against reality, where they claim that there are these large number of super criminals who
yeah,
are running around the U.S. who are illegal immigrants and could easily be picked up and deported. And they're basically figuring out what I've been saying for a long time, which is illegal immigrants are less likely to be criminals than you think and less likely than native born Americans. So the scope of doing that is limited. So like you saw like Guantanamo Bay, right? They said we're going
yeah.
to send the worst of the worst criminals to Guantanamo Bay, and they just shut this down and brought them all back to the US mainland. But at the height of it, 40% of the people there didn't have any criminal cases or charges
Wow.
against them. So it's easy to talk a big game when you're not in power.
Yeah.
But when you actually go in and have to try to put in effect this mass deportation plan, they're gonna have a lot of problems. And I don't think they're gonna get back up to like even the first term Obama numbers in terms of removals. It might take a couple years to even get there.
I think the scare tactics is number one doing. They just updated the my.uscis page when you lock in. It says if you're here without permission or legally, get out. We don't want you here. It's like this kind of childish kind of language, not even very sophisticated. They could have put a chat GPT and said right at a 10th grade reading level or something. It was more like two grade, second grade people. But I think the fear is just self removal is what they're trying to push. But it's. I mean, there's a lot of businesses that have this. I mean, millions of people in New York, LA, Miami. So it's extremely disruptive of like the whole economy at a time when maybe we could talk about this idea of switching from a tariff-based income system for the government as opposed to tax-based, income tax-based. Have you done any research on that? Is that an area you specialize or could talk about?
I can talk about it. I know enough about it. It's basically impossible to do. Um, so so the outlays are too large. A majority or near majority of federal tax revenue is through the income tax
Hmm.
right now. So the notion that you're going to get rid of that and replace it with tariffs is just like fanciful. The thing is, trade flows are very sensitive to tariff rates. So if tariffs go up by a little bit, a lot of trade flows will really collapse. And if the trade collapses, then you're not going to collect any revenue on the tariff side. So the rates on tariffs would have to be like, I think it's like about 200%. And the amount of trade coming in would have to be the same
Hmm.
in order to get close to that level. And if you had tariff rates at 200%, there'd basically be no international trade into the United States because it would not make sense
Yeah.
to do that economically, to buy from abroad.
I
So it's
just remember,
fanciful.
yeah.
Like, yeah.
When I was a kid, like I have kids right now. We buy so much toys off Amazon that's crazy. And I'm like, if I just had like 1/10 of these, I was like a kid in the '90s would jump for joy because it was so expensive toys that what they were because you're paying 1990 prices, which the value is when now we didn't have China pumping out pennies on the dollar. So if you train that system up, it's a huge like change. I mean, that's in lifestyle. I mean, kind of maybe for the better because we buy way too much junk for the kids because it's like, oh, it's only $10. It's like let's just get it. But all of a sudden we have all this garbage like of toys piling up. But nonetheless, like yeah,
Yeah. I mean, it does decrease your income, though. I mean, this is the thing. Like, if the prices for the goods and services that you buy go up, then you are in effect poorer
yeah,
because the whole point of having money is to be able to buy stuff. And if you can't buy stuff anymore because it's all expensive, right? And a
yeah,
lot of these tariffs, the things on like steel, aluminum, copper, other metals, it affects every good that has those metals inside, which is, of course, a lot of goods, and it affects every good made by machines that are made of those goods.
yeah,
So it's like the ripple effects on this are tremendous. Now, tariffs don't cause inflation; they cause prices to go up for some goods, but that just means that people's incomes are lower because you have to pay more to buy this stuff. So that just means that the prices for other things go down because we're not buying them as much, right? So it's not like general inflation, but a lot of the things that we want to buy will be more expensive.
yeah. I mean, it just jacked up like this kind of disruptive because okay, let's say maybe we could bolster the machinery inside the country to make up for that, which is but the internet kind of cut out. Wait for it. Like I was watching on TV on TikTok or something said if they want to turn on aluminum smelter, aluminum, it's like it takes a, a city size of Cleveland energy just to have one aluminum development or steel or whatever this. So it's not like we just pull out of a hat and make the systems and have the energy levels and all that. So just like on a pressing a button to turn on, if it was maybe staggered and say, okay, in 2 years, if you don't reach this 1% a month or something, but like just hitting 100%, it's like dropping a bomb on everybody, including yourself. It's kind of, I don't know.
It,
Like,
it They are doing it like in the worst way possible because sometimes they change the tariffs over the course of a day.
yeah,
Literally a day, they'll change it and they'll pull it back. But I mean, no matter how they do it, tariffs will have an adverse and negative effect on American income. I mean, this is something that economists on the left, economists on the right, libertarians, even a lot of socialists agree that free trade is good. It maximizes incomes uh, across countries. It increases the amount that we can consume. It lowers prices for a lot of the goods and services that we want, and it's a good thing. And if you just think about like the way that you live your life, right? Like you're an attorney. You don't grow your own food.
yeah,
If we had a law that said like we're going to raise the price of the food you buy by 2,000%, It might make sense for you to start growing some own food in the backyard, but that also means you have to spend less time being an attorney,
Yeah.
which is how you make more money. And overall, you'd be a lot poorer. So if we do that on the country level, we're just going to be poorer. Now, some steel workers or aluminum workers or the people who own those factories in the US, they'll do well. But every company that consumes steel, that consumes aluminum, is going to be worse off, and consumers are going to be worse off. And the net effect is really bad for the US economy.
What about the fact that like Europe and Canada, even and China, they have their own tariffs that they have protectionist economies, whereas we're opening up, we have lower rates. I've read even like if you want to ship something from China to here, the postage rates are set so like they have a decreased rate, so it has a benefit for them to send stuff here. But if we want to send stuff there, it's more expensive. Um, Using these as potential tactics to get them to put down their trade barriers or something like that.
So that negotiating tactic is kind of like holding a gun to your own head to get the other person to stop hurting themselves, right?
Yeah,
Like tariffs are paid overwhelmingly by the country that imposes them on themselves, right? So I think the smarter reaction to other countries and to the U.S. should do when we have these trade barriers in other places is to lower ours even more because we capture so much more of the benefits. Now, to be fair, like these countries, they should get rid of their tariffs. They should get rid of all these trade barriers. I think every country in the world should. But just because another country is hurting themselves with these trade barriers doesn't mean that we should hurt ourselves. Just the opposite, I think.
yeah. I mean, like what China is doing is essentially is hurting its own population by
Yeah.
by disrupting the flow. So the government's taking the money and keeping it for itself, and it's kind of keeping its population so a certain level of poverty to be able to maintain these kind of levels. But they have a strategic plan in mind, I guess, to increase manufacturing. Have It's more important to have jobs than how much the jobs are necessarily paid in that kind of sense. Um, but it does create a system where the U.S. becomes like it is more because I think Fed policy and the amount of loans they give out, but we're like a pure, essentially not pure, but we're like strong service based economy, which is just like we could borrow money, we have cash, so we're just going to spend money on services, and that's could be disruptive really easily if you don't have an economic base. It kind of affects our ability to create military goods if we need to on the fly because we don't have the factoring, we don't have the training of people. Like, but I'm not sure if that's 100 years ago way of thinking because maybe I don't know.
So the thing that like most people don't realize is that U.S. manufacturing output, like the value of the goods made in factories in the U.S., is basically near the highest it's ever been. And the reason why people think there's a decline is because the number of people working in manufacturing keeps going down. And that's because manufacturing keeps getting a lot more efficient. So we have a huge, large manufacturing sector in the United States. It's just that fewer and fewer people are working in them. And one day, and then in the future, all these factories may be automated. But if that happens, they'll be making more stuff
Yeah,
than ever before. Now they're making higher value items,
yeah,
supercomputers, specialty types of steel that are high grades, right? As well as,
mhm,
mid and low grade steel. But, different things. Whereas China, they have a lot of high end manufacturing, but they also make a lot of like, cheap toys and shoes and
yeah.
things like that. So, I think the supposed decline of U.S. manufacturing is vastly overstated.
Well, it's kind of like agriculture used to be like 90% of people, 95% employed. Now it's like 1% of the population. So eventually manufacturing goes the same way once we go to the next level of economy.
And we've never had more food. Like,
Yeah.
we have an enormous quantity of food production in the U.S., but you're right, it's a lot more efficient, and not many of us have to work in it. Thank God. Like, I don't want to grow food, man. That sounds like a hard job.
Well, speaking of growing food, that's like a major area of issue for immigration because a lot of these farms, I mean, hopefully have H-2B visas for farm workers, F-2A, whichever it is, but a lot of them don't. And they're having problems, people even showing up to work. Florida, especially with how harsh the immigration policy is there. What kind of stuff are you seeing in this area?
So I'm just seeing a lot of uncertainty. Now, on the bright side, during the first Trump administration, the H-2A visa is one that he didn't even shut down during COVID. And that's one where there was some movement in some positive directions to some like deregulation of that.
Yeah.
So I think if there's one visa that's like pretty safe during Trump years, it's probably the H-2A visa.
Yeah.
Um, that's something where, like, even when you talk to immigration restrictionists, a lot of them will concede, yeah, we should have seasonal farm workers,
Hmm.
because that's just an industry where you're not going to get many Americans to come into it, because the wages that you'd have to pay to get Americans to come in are so high that it just wouldn't make sense to grow food here at all in the first place.
Wow, wow. And already the cost of goods has gone so much for farm workers, from water to like, fertilizer and all that kind of stuff has gotten so expensive, oil. So what other analysis, what kind of stuff are you working on right now in the immigration space?
So, trying to take a look at what the administration is doing, what they're planning, what some of their arguments will be for restrictions. So, we just put out a paper about the annual chance of being murdered in a terrorist attack committed by a foreign born person in the
Mhm.
US over the last 50 years, going back to 1975. Um, and we found, and including 9/11, which is the largest terrorist attack in world history, we found the annual chance is about 4.6 million per year, which is a fairly small chance, frankly.
Mhm.
Your annual chance of being murdered in a normal homicide is about 1 in 20,000 per year during that time period. So for every person murdered in a foreign-born terrorist attack, there's about 330 people murdered in a normal homicide. And so this is just not a very good reason to restrict immigration. The government should try to keep out terrorists, of course,
Yeah.
but it's not a good reason for like broad-based across the board restrictions or for country bans, which I think are coming in the next week or two.
Yeah, it's such a good scare tactic because it scares the hell out of people. But I mean, they should do things like high profile targets, like energy places. They should decentralize the internet so people can hack them and stuff like that. That's more consequences than spending all the money on that they do on the terrorist programs that we have. But it's a cash cow. I mean, Doge should look into that. All the people who got funding the war on terrorism, trillions of dollars, for sure. I would say half of that probably got afraid of waste and abuse or fraud, waste, abuse, all that kind of stuff. But it's so easy to yank money out when people are scared like that.
No, it really is. And the thing that really bothers me as an economist and a numbers person is the chance of being murdered in a terror attack is so low that almost all of this money is just, even if it's like spent on the programs it's supposed to be spent on, it's in effect a waste,
Yeah,
because you're basically reducing like a really, really, really small chance just a little bit more, right? And
yeah.
that's just, it's not worth it. Like the amount of money they're spending on that could have been used to, well, cut taxes to pay down the debt, or it could have been used to save more lives in other areas where there actually are higher risks.
I mean, on the state level, like I'm in Woodland Hills, California. Every day there's like 7 robberies happening here. It's like a good area that all of a sudden it just like we almost, I guess, all robbers almost came in my backyard. They saw me and ran away. 3 guys. So last 2 weeks ago, or a couple weeks ago. So it's like just setting money for more LAPD parole around the street just so they see a cop going could be a major difference in people's lives, because people get really. There was another guy got tied up. Imagine that family's going to have like
Jeez.
scare hell to the life sort of life. They can have trauma from that, being tied up and almost killed by robbers and stuff. So these are like more practical stuff that affects it. But it's one of those things. It's easy to build a bridge and get a lot of fame for it, but the person who keeps it up and just keeps it maintained, that one never gets too much attention.
And those are the important things.
Yeah,
Those really are the important things. Um, one of the other things that Trump did that was a little surprising was the birthright citizenship,
yeah.
trying to affect those rules
Right off the
and
bat, yeah, he went
reduce.
for that.
Yeah, that was crazy. And the thing that gets me is it's not just the 14th Amendment, but this goes back in English common law to the 1600s as birthright citizenship being the norm
Hmm.
for Anglo countries,
Yeah,
Anglo-Saxon countries that inherited their Anglo-Saxon system of jurisprudence, which is what we practice. And there's really just no good reason for it. I mean, a lot of the academic research on this is in countries where people, if they're born there, they're citizens, there's much better integration, much better assimilation culturally, much better economically. The kids born there are more patriotic. They
yeah.
feel more like a member of that country. And so it's like if you wanted to sabotage American immigration assimilation, this is a good way to start by repealing birthright citizenship.
But you see this in Europe, where mainland Europe, where they don't have this, and you always stay a foreigner. And I have family
Yeah.
over there. When you're foreign, even if you're like 3 or 4 generations in, you're still the foreigner because of this kind of stuff. Whereas in America, as soon as you're born here, you think, oh, I'm a patriot American. Nowadays, I mean, there's a lot of propaganda at school and stuff that teach you like hate America and all that kind of stuff, which obviously we do bad stuff too. But that's such a good point I didn't think about. You know, the founding fathers, one of the reasons for the revolution, they said, was because England wouldn't let them naturalize citizens in America. And that was a big, that was like number 14 or something like that on the list of the articles of whatever it was, revolution.
In the Declaration of Independence.
Yeah, because the king wouldn't let him do that, so they had to like. What happened was people would be here and they couldn't like buy land sometimes, or they couldn't plan out ahead of time because they didn't know like if they would get kicked out in 5 years. Now, speaking of being kicked out on the green card holder, this whole Khalil issue is such a controversial one. I'm not sure if some of you guys work on, 'cause it's not necessarily economic based, but if there's that much uncertainty about being a lawful permanent resident, it's going to be really disruptive on travel for Americans. Because I have people who are green card holders and do business travel. It helps the American economy, who are not don't want to leave because they're afraid they might not like get back in. Regular people too, from like France or something like that. They just are like shocked that they would do something like that.
No, it's just I think the courts are gonna um, make sure that this doesn't go through because trying to amend the Constitution and common law through executive order, as far as I can tell, the judges have all basically struck this down so far, and it's still
Yeah,
climbing up in the courts. But like you mentioned, Mahmoud Khalil, the Columbia student who's a green card holder who was arrested and detained off of this fairly obscure statute in the INA that says basically the Secretary of State can revoke a visa if it's that person is detrimental to American foreign policy. I mean, have you heard of anything like this before?
I remember it was like the communist cases way back when they would do this kind of stuff, or even it's one of those like Alien Sedition Act stuff from that they got into place, but when one of those kind of laws. Someone wrote online, maybe in the late '90s, there was like a Mexican.
Yeah.
There was like these. It's one of those one-off things you use every 40 years, kind of things, and every time you use it, it's controversial. But use it. I mean, if used against like a political actor, like it was a from what I was reading in in 1999, it was like a governor of a state in Mexico. Okay, that's a political actor against foreign policy. But to do it for just a random person who's like community organizing, if you will, that's really dangerous for a lot of aspects of our country.
Yeah, I'm worried about it quite a bit. I'm kind of holding back until I see what more is going on because maybe there is like a material support for foreign terrorism
Yeah,
charge that's legit. Maybe there's something else, but if it's just speech and if it's just protesting, which is what it looks like now, I think it's incredibly worrying. And I think there's going to be some big court cases about this. And, the silver lining is we might get, you know, really clearly stated that yes, LPRs and other people on US soil do have all of these rights,
yeah,
and maybe peel back that line of the INA, right? Because it is a very broad power
yeah.
that has enormous consequences.
And it's sought to protect Jewish students, and obviously
Yeah.
Israel is like a the big elephant in the room on that. But I can only imagine it like hinders. It looks worse for Israel doing this kind of stuff, where people are like, do really like there's anti boycott movement that's cool. That's like 38 states or something right now. Like this kind of stuff hurts the image of Israel that they have this much effect on speech policies in the United States. So it's a troublesome situation.
No, it's one of these things where also like, I'm sure I haven't seen any actual quotes from Khalil that,
Yeah,
seem that bad. I'm sure there's something, right?
yeah,
Because he's, a protester against Israel, and there's people get very
mhm,
heated and
yeah,
nasty about that stuff. Um, uh, but every First Amendment case that expands the scope of free speech, which I'm in favor of, every one of those has a defendant who is basically an incredible jerk,
yeah.
right?
That's the whole
And
point. Yeah,
that's the whole point.
yeah,
Wow. Because like of course, like there's not going to be a free speech case against something that's totally inoffensive.
Yeah.
And I probably wouldn't want to hang out with Khalil. Okay, I'm going to say that. Like, I
Yeah.
don't want to have the guy in my house. But that doesn't matter. And defense of the First Amendment has to be independent of the content of the speech,
Yeah.
because otherwise there is no free speech.
What's just comical is this is such a high profile case. The officer who signed off on notice to appear had errors in it, and the guy's last
Yeah.
name, I hate to laugh at someone's last name, is Moran or Moron or something like. I couldn't believe that. It's like a caricature. This guy with his last name had all these typos and errors in like a very high profile case. If that's a legitimate NTA that's going making rounds, but maybe it isn't. That's why they. But I was just like the handling of the situation is really bizarre. There could be better ways to do it, but that's the world we live in today.
It's really buffoonish. Like, I have some bets with my colleagues and other people I know about Trump and immigration. And I think the major impact is going to be on the legal system and closing off pathways
Yeah,
to the US. But I don't think they're going to be very successful at their mass deportations because it's really hard and they're really incompetent.
yeah,
And this is just great evidence of this type of incompetence, where you would think that on something like, I mean, the story that I heard was also they thought he was on a student visa when they went to arrest him. And they said, oh no. And he said, oh, I'm on an LPR. And they're like, oh, yeah, we know that. We're going to get you anyway. And
yeah.
like, I don't think they knew that.
It happens all the time, like where they don't do the research and just pick people up. There was yeah, there's a lot of programs they're doing. I mean, one thing is ICE with more funding, they get more police state kind of measures they could test out. So to me, all this immigration potentially is just a front to test out more police state kind of stuff. It's like
Oh,
it's a the
totally.
public will engage it, let us do it. So let's do more cameras everywhere, videotaping license plates, AI tracking all your social media. It's really an excuse to do that for the general public rather than just this one subgroup.
Yeah, and it's something that nobody realizes, that like every aspect of immigration enforcement is also a restriction on the freedoms of Americans.
Yeah,
So like, just like the I-9 form, right? You fill out a form when you get a job.
yeah.
Well, everybody has to do it now.
Hmm.
Everybody, native born Americans, citizens, immigrants, everybody, for it to work. E-verify, everybody's name needs to be run through it if you want to get a job. And these rules need to apply to us too to have any hope of working. And so I think there's a lot of evidence that creeping law enforcement powers, reductions in civil liberties, etc., they are being test driven and tried out, and you know on immigrants first before they get expanded to the rest of us.
Yeah, there's a biblical aspect that, and essentially, the Christians have such power in the politics, especially in the Trump administration, of the mark of the beast. This e-verify system, where if you want to work, eat, you have to go within this database, and you have to do it every like. Thankfully, it's not been adopted widely. They're trying to push it on people again right now with H-1B filing season. Some people were there's rumors that people are automatically being enrolled in it without knowing. I'm not sure it's true or not, but it's a system that overall Americans would not want if you think about the larger consequences of having to track the federal government tracking every single little thing. But I mean, some people are into it; they don't know. But to me, it's just there's a lot of negative stuff that comes out that's not necessary. We don't need to have that.
Yeah, we definitely don't need it, and it encourages more identity theft, because E-Verify just checks the documents and information you give it. It doesn't check you, right? So if I'm an illegal immigrant and you're a native born American, I can just give them your identity information, and it checks it and approves it for work. And it's like it's a stupid system,
Yeah,
frankly. It's not a silver bullet, and it encourages more of the illegal behavior that it's intended to stop, which is
yeah.
identity theft and illegal hiring.
Oh boy. So it's not much thoughtful kind of, but it's I guess when you have machinery this big and so it's such complicated, it's hard to do anything, especially anything thoughtful. What? So how does the rest of the year look for you? Thanks for coming on again. What kind of? I guess every day you wake up, there's like a new thing you got to jump on and deal with.
I have no idea what's going to be the next thing, man. Next time we talk, who knows what kind of world we're going to be living in or what the big immigration issue is. And you guys must have it rough too. I mean, these rules and laws and the uncertainty must really keep you up at night sometimes.
It does. I mean, last time around, it started happening again where like every 12 hours things change and things that were safe. And it's like, I have someone who married a U.S. citizen and their student visa expired while they're waiting for the case to be approved. Normally they don't do anything, but now there's a chance that they could come after that person or find little problems where it's like, oh, you didn't mark this box where if you left it empty, you didn't write not applicable instead of just leaving, you left it blank instead of writing NA. It's like really dumb kind of stuff like that. Errors happening. We just had one guy have his work permit denied, so he lost his job. And so I was able to, within a couple of weeks, get it back because they realized it was government error. This might have happened anyways because they make errors all the time. But just like, I'm like, it's kind of a weird situation. This guy lost his job and lost a month of life. Now he has to find a new job because of really stupid errors. And I imagine these stupid errors are going to just increase because it's the easy way to say, oh, sorry, but it does the harm that they're trying to force, which just seems like the policy is just cause harm. That's the direction you're going for.
Well, be vigilant.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. That's what this show is about, trying to share the information so other people are aware of stuff ahead of time. But I really appreciate you coming on, Alex. If you want to see your work, what's the best place to go and check it out?
CATO.org. That's CATO.org. You can see my work there and work by my colleague David Beer, who also works on immigration policy.
Very cool. I have to have them on the show again. Both are very active on Twitter as well, so you get a lot of data there. Stay on the line for a second, but I want to thank you for coming on again, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Well, thanks everyone for listening to that. Having Alex is on is good. I used to study economics heavily. Like when you get older, you think like, oh, it was a couple years ago. It was like 20 years ago. I spent years studying economics and I could get really down. But then I just got burned out from finance, economics, and really practice of law, anything other than immigration. And so now, like I would have had really good questions I could ask 15 years ago from an expert like him about this stuff. But right now I'm like, oh man, economics, finance, it just, I'd rather think about much happier stuff. But it's good to have people really analyzing this stuff and bring the information out there. And so I appreciate his time for coming on the show. For those still tuned in, we have a really good course on marriage immigration. I call it the Ultimate Marriage Green Card course because it teaches family-based consular processing, inadmissibility, 15 plus hours of video series, private one-on-one office hours, group office hours to get you really going to either create your own practice and have your independence, or if you already have a practice, to expand it from learning the details, getting better at what you do, and having that personal mentorship that comes with it. So if you're interested in this wonderful course I'm really proud of, email me at info@immigrationlawyerstoolbox.com for more information about it. Info@immigrationlawyerstoolbox.com is the website. If you go to our website, iltbox.com, there's a page that describes generally what it's about. I'm working on a landing page that goes into more detail, but it's all more and more work. I'd rather spend time doing these videos, talking with you, and having one-on-ones with you, but we got to do that kind of landing page stuff too. So having said that, I appreciate everybody. I'll see you all soon in the next episode. Bye-bye.